Hello and welcome back to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is Logan Stump.
Jordan, it's starting now. The season is starting now.
The season is starting. Baseball might be in a lockout, but MLS kicking into gear. Super Draft was today. And now our season previews start today, as we are going to be not going in any specific order here, but we are starting where we started last year. With Austin FC, if people have been with us for that long.
You know what's fun, Jordan? I was just thinking about this. If this happens, then we do get Houston as the next one. We're kind of following in order.
The same order.
Until we hit like our other preview that we're going to do hopefully on Friday and have recorded ready for Monday. So
yeah, super excited for what we got coming up. No, like I said, no order. We were going to go west and then east like we did last time. And start with the expansion team, but just you got to get the guests when you can get the guests, right? We're not going to put ourselves under that pressure.
Not again.
But yeah, so we will have some. We're going to be doing some Austin FC. Who do we have with us today, Logan?
Yeah, so joining us, we're doing Austin FC. So we got the guys from Moontower Soccer, which is an Austin FC podcast. We've got, and they're part of the Striker Texas website. So if you guys subscribe to that. And go check out their content. It's great content if you're looking for anything in not just Austin, but they also do Houston, Dallas, and they do a couple of the USL teams and stuff. So it's pretty good stuff. But we have Landon coming on and Jeremiah. They're over there at Moontower Soccer. So it should be pretty interesting. And I'm really excited about this one because we haven't really had many outside perspectives as far as from the guests that we had originally during the previews earlier in 2021. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this all falls into place and what their thoughts are on Austin. I've been listening to some of their episodes, so it'll be interesting to see where they kind of fall after some of the questions we ask.
Yeah, I'm super excited to kind of get a different perspective here on Austin. We'll talk some super draft with them. We did get, a pick, first round pick that we'll ask them about. And just want to say shout out to former Philadelphia Union Academy and former Christos FC and University of Maryland player Ben Bender.
Great name.
Who is now going to be the first pick in the 2022 MLS Super Draft, picked by Charlotte FC. So Baltimore, born and raised. I think his brother played for the Charlotte Independents, which was a team there, if I have that information correct. So if so, there's a link there at least. But should be good. Wish him the best, and I'll be watching him closely. Got to get the Maryland representation here.
I was going to say, you and your Maryland people, man. It's a tight ship they run up there in Maryland. They're all friends. Yeah. They seem to have a tight community. I know that following the college teams, that's always fun because they're really tight knit. So hopefully Maryland gets some implants of some NC or Charlotte FC fans. So definitely be watching ahead for that. And your Bobcats are up there, Jordan. So I think you'll still see a game when that's ready to be seen.
Yeah, and we had like Taylor Twellman, a former Terp, Omar Gonzalez, a former Terp. Maryland has had quite a few. AJ De La Garza, quite a few. Zach McMath, I can just keep naming them. Quite a few Maryland players in MLS and in the U.S. national team and such. So it's a great college. I didn't go there, but I mean, it's a great. It's too expensive for me, but it was a great college for people that could afford it. And produce some really good talent for the for MLS and the USA. So, but we'll go ahead and we'll take a break, and then we'll welcome in our guests to talk Austin FC. And we are back from our break, and we have Landon Cotham and Jeremiah Bentley from Moontower Soccer joining us. How are you guys today?
Doing well. Thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We love talking soccer, so it seems like you guys do too. So we're happy to be here.
Yes.
I was going to say, I think we stole a page. We had the Austin TV guys on and Top Flight, and we're like, all right. So when
Last
we
year,
see
yeah.
him interacting with different people, we're like, all right, we need to kind of move on to New Blood because we'd always had Hernan on. So it was like, all right, let's do some Moontown just because I was like, they're interacting and the striker and everything else. I was like, these guys know what they're talking about. But yeah, I really enjoyed you guys' show. Just listening back to some of the episodes, it's great coverage of Austin. It's a lot of fun to listen to.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, this is only our second full season of covering all things American soccer and MLS and stuff. So, and it also is the second full season for Austin, so we can kind of transition to that. But I just wanted to ask for the listeners there, how did you two get started with, doing the show? And I guess how early was it on your radar? Because I know there was the Austin USL team that existed for a bit. There was also the Austin team, I think, that went to Orlando for a bit. And then, just the constant, like you said before, off air, the politics leading up to this.
You want to take that, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I mean, I can start with sort of, I guess, our general involvement. And so I think it was in October 2017, this tweet came out from Grant Wall that said that Anthony Precourt was possibly looking to move his franchise to Austin, which created, a lot of excitement in Columbus and in Austin on Twitter, obviously. And so I heard rumors that something might be cooking and, knew some people in the Austin soccer scene, but just like went to a meetup later that month from a group of people who were working to like try to bring Major League Soccer to Austin, and really got involved from there. And I think Landon, probably you were not long after that, sort of started going to the happy hours, and then it turned into going to happy hours and talking about stuff to tweeting about stuff to the great Twitter wars of 2018, and then being at city council at 3:00 in the morning, and thank the Lord we finally got to like a good vote and a team, and we got to talk about soccer.
Yeah, I think we were both just one of several people who, as Austin FC looked like it was more and more going to become a reality, there's a group of people who just kind of gravitated towards each other in Austin around that idea. And one of the supporters groups, Austin Anthem, had a podcast, and we're putting it out like once a month at the time. Jeremiah and I were the ones who showed up every time, and so it eventually became our show, and we did that for about a year, and then started our own independent show that became Moontower Soccer. And I was telling you off air that we've been doing a soccer podcast in Austin for almost 3 years at this point, and we've only been playing soccer for about 9 months. But it's been quite the journey, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and one of my favorite examples of that is we were trying to put a show together, right? And there's nothing going on because it's like there's a vote, and so like reading the notes of a homeowners association meeting. It's like somebody who worked for the team, but like come to the homeowners association, like told them like, hey, traffic's gonna be we're gonna have a plan and stuff, and that's like literally the content we had to share because that was the news about Austin at the time.
And were either of you fans of any other MLS teams beforehand, or just like other soccer teams outside of the league, or?
Jeremiah's been a fan of LAFC since he was a young boy.
Yeah, since the 70s, I've been a lifelong LAFC fan. But no, I've been a Liverpool fan for a long time. Just since my oldest son was really small, and I figured out that babies don't sleep, and European soccer is on at the same time that babies are up. So I did that, and then I got it. I went to Bank of California a couple of years ago and got to see an LAFC match there and see that 32-52 experience, and it's by far the best live experience I've been at. So I did spend a couple of years as an LAFC fan.
Yeah, I didn't really have an MLS club. I followed like national team guys in MLS, and that was about it. And then whenever the Austin rumors started up, I really kind of dove in and kind of like took myself to school on MLS and just tried to learn as much as I could and watch as much as I could about the league, just so I would know as much about it as I could as we were going into this first year. So we have our own team now, but over those two and a half seasons that I was paying a lot of attention to it, I really did kind of grow some affinities for players and teams and things like that. So it's a little bit weird to like have to root against some of those guys now, but I do have some of my favorites outside of Austin FC still.
I was gonna say, I think that's the most interesting thing about doing the league wide. Obviously, we have our own, we're fans of our own teams. He a Union fan, I Orlando City fan. But it is fun to watch from an outsider's perspective, because I do think that it's interesting. One, watching Austin just absolutely annihilate Twitter. I feel like if anybody's interacting with anybody, any kind of fan base, it always seems to be Austin in on the throne. It's like, okay, what's Top Flight talking about now? What's Moontown talking about? What's the striker doing? Like, it just seems and I don't know if it's because we have a lot of Austin people on ours, but it just seems like it's very quiet over on the Charlotte FC side. It was very, very, very loud with the Austin FC, but it was like, that was exciting. And I think that kind of stems into the first question we wanted to really get into with Austin was, how did that excitement play out in 2021? I know it was not a good year, probably in anybody's eyes that they watched the team play, but like, how was that welcoming in a new professional sports team? Because it is the first professional sports team that comes to Austin. How can you just kind of explain how you guys, and I know from listening to the podcast that you guys had, been in supporter groups before, or, kind of retiring now or whatever it might be. Can you kind of just explain what that atmosphere was like and then welcoming Austin in?
Yeah. So, I mean, leading up, like in those few years leading up to it, there were various points along the way where we would see the excitement happening in Austin. I think inside like our little bubble, we were like, I think this is going to be big. Like, this is going to be really good. But there was a lot of people online and in other parts of MLS world who were not happy with Anthony Precourt, and by way of that, not happy with anybody in Austin, it seemed.
Right.
Even though we did really nothing wrong to to make any of this happen. But it was just like, we kept being told that like, oh, Austin's not going to work. Austin doesn't deserve soccer, blah, 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 blah. But internally, as we were doing the work on the ground here, we kept having these little milestones. It was like, I think this is going to be big. And then it would be like, well, no, this is definitely going to be big, but like, how big? And in the last like 6 months or so before the season, I think it became very obvious here in Austin, among the people paying attention, that like the MLS doesn't know what's coming. Like, this is going to be like, I want to say like the best in MLS, but like among the best stadium atmospheres in MLS. Like, that's what's coming this year. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. But here in Austin, I think it was pretty clear that that's what was kind of on the way, just by the buzz in the city, what the supporters groups were doing with music, and just how much energy there was, not just on a passive level, but on a very active level of the supporters groups, like getting ready for this first year to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of this heartbeat of this is Lamurga de Austin, which is the stadium band, right? Not the stadium band, but it's a supporters band, and it's it's drums and it's brass and everything. I mean, that group of people, Landon was in it, and then decided, I guess he had to choose between like playing drums and making a podcast. But I mean, they've been I don't know, 18 months they've been practicing. I mean, it was not like March of 2021 happened, and then all of a sudden like this fan experience and supporters experience and enthusiasm popped up. There were a lot of people who were spending a lot of time and effort like building toward this. And I mean, hopefully people get that and sort of appreciate that effort, because I know then also there's the other side of it where people just show up and they're like, oh, like my song is awesome that I just wrote on the back of a napkin today, and the whole stadium should sing it, but like there's a whole big group of people that are doing a lot to make that happen. And that was the most exciting part of 2021, because like you said, with the results on the field the way they were, the experience in the stands and everybody, the community was absolutely the best part of the season for us.
I was going to say, the Minister of Culture, when you snag Matthew McConaughey, who I think you guys joked about him showing up to like one match or something like that as the beginning of the year. When you snag somebody like that, that's when I felt this was different, when he's sitting in the van talking Verde, and it seemed very unreal. And I can't imagine what it was like in the city, just to kind of feel that vibe. And I know it had been very passionate about its college town, and now it's become this professional football town. And it's really cool to watch from the outside. Oh, yeah, tear down my whole setup down there.
Yeah, we had a Zoom call with him where he like dialed in shirtless from somewhere, and just there's like 100 supporters. The team set it up, and it's like we're gonna have a supporters call with McConaughey, and nobody knew what to expect. And he popped up, and he's wearing a beanie hat and no shirt. But I think it was in the middle of the summer, and he was just like McConaughey for an hour. Just, I mean, like the guy doesn't act like he's just playing himself all the time, and he was like all over the place. And the marketing guy for the team would be like, I think Matthew's saying blah 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 blah, to, like translate it back to English. But I mean, it was so much fun. And he came to the Yeti store when we announced the sponsor. And I mean, he's been around the sides of it. He's like super entertaining. And it's definitely an identifier for like, there's a lot of people who love Austin who don't know anything about soccer, and like having McConaughey as the face of it, like really helps tie that all together.
Moving on to like the play side of it, Josh Wolf's first year coaching a team was also the first year of Austin being in MLS. The Wolf Out hashtag was trending throughout the community and fan base on Twitter a lot. What are your thoughts on that for a first year coach, or first year for a team having that pressure? Was it a little unrealistic, or was it warranted? And what changes did Wolf make to the team to help get them out of some tough spells, or may have caused some of those tough spells?
Yeah, I think like it was always going to be a tough road for him, right? Like no head coach experience. We always said before the season started, I would say often that Josh Wolf is as prepared to coach an MLS team as anyone could have been who has never coached an MLS team before, because he had that pedigree and had worked under Berhalter for so long that you had to imagine that if one could be prepared for it without having done it, he was going to be that guy. But we expected there to be some bumps in the road, and there were. And I think it's a little bit underrated how difficult of a hand he was dealt in the season, with how many injuries we had, with Musajice being stuck in like visa limbo for, what was it, 2 or 3 months, Jeremiah? So
yeah, it was a long time.
No strikers. We finally signed this big striker, and we can't get him in the country. And so just lots of things like that happening over and over and over, that he was dealt a really bad hand and had to play the best he could with it. That being said, I don't think he did as well as he could have done. And he definitely made some rookie mistakes that you were talking about, the avid fan base here in Austin. The flip side of that coin is that expectations are high. Like the fans are bringing it, the stadium atmosphere is bringing it. That means they're going to expect a lot from the technical staff and the team. And so there is a lot of pressure on Wolf, and like maybe a little bit more than there would have been in a different market or a different situation, but that's the scenario at this point. And I think we kind of decided at the end of this last season, like, how much leash is Wolf going to have this year? I think he deserves until midway through this season. If we're showing some progress and the team looks better, he's making smarter decisions during the games, he should keep his job. But if he's running things the same way he was during the middle of last season, then like I am by no means a hashtag Wolf Out person, but by mid-season, if things don't look better, then I don't know that he necessarily deserves to keep his job.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to like his demonstrating like a willingness to learn and a willingness to adapt. Like obviously he's a smart guy, played at the national team, had a ton of preparation. And he would talk a lot in the post-game press conferences about, things being a lesson, or like going back to the drawing board, or we need to do this differently or that differently or whatever. But I think I would like to see a little more like conversion of that to action, right? Like it's easy after you lose to say like, oh yeah, that was on me. We should have done blah, blah, blah differently or whatever. But, he needs to adjust. And I don't know that he has it in him to come out of the system and play the strengths of the players and sort of make the adjustments we may need to make to succeed in order to thrive in Austin.
So do you think there's like you mentioned, the way that they're playing, or if they're playing better? So is there like, if they're, bottom or second bottom in the West halfway through, you think he's out?
I think whether or not he is still up in the air.
Okay.
I don't know what Claudio Reyna and Anthony Precourt think about it, but right. I know what a lot of fans already think, and I would call myself on the more forgiving side. And if we're last in the conference at midway of the season, I think he should lose his job. And if I'm saying that, then I think there's most of the Austin FC fan base would say that.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, for somebody covering the team, I feel like there's more patience with the actual coach in the system and that's trying to work in. But I do think what Jordan said, it's like that. It's almost that a year and a half, you get that to that year and a half mark. And if things are not progressing the way that they should, I think that's when red flags start to fly up. It's like, okay, something's different about this kind of situation. He's now started to get some players in that are his own choosing. Anthony seems to want to spend money, so that's always really good when you see new stuff. Some of those new owners step in. It is interesting to see, just hear your perspective on it, because it was like Twitter was ablaze with the Wolf out. I don't think I've seen so many people calling for a head so early.
Well, that's what I was wondering too, is, from my experience of Precourt, just, watching the league and stuff, I would actually think that while he wants to spend money, I feel like a lot of that's talk. I mean, he sometimes brings in the players and stuff, but I feel like his coaches have always been these type of hires of like Caleb Porter or, Greg Berhalter, or, the crew teams and stuff were not like very experienced foreign coaches or anything coming in. So I do wonder if maybe that will give him more of the leeway than anything else. I'm not sure if he's going to bring in like a big Tata Martino-esque coach or anything.
I think. I'll go ahead and start, Landon. You probably have a smarter sounding opinion, but I agree a little bit with Jordan. I mean, there's a lot of familiarity all throughout this organization, right? There's a lot of players with Columbus experience. There's coaches with Columbus experience. There's obviously almost the whole front office came down from Columbus,
right?
And so I do think that now fans can apply a lot of pressure, right? And fans ultimately are the people that are paying the bills, and like the fan experience in Austin is big, but I think that he will get a longer leash from the organization he might have otherwise because of that familiarity, and just because, that whole, because like everybody's buddies and they're all comfortable together. And so that's something I worry about. And that's where I think like it's kind of on us to push, right? If we get to the middle of next year and we're still in last place, like we talk a lot about not being Cincinnati, and being happy for that. But if we're headed down that road, like I think we do need to raise a stir.
And Precourt wasn't one to really care about the Columbus fans either. So I do wonder how much the fan pressure can get to. I mean, this is his final, this is his resting spot, right? Like this is where he wanted to be. So I do think it might matter more. Landon, did you have anything to add about that?
I wanted to speak to the Precourt part. I think he had earned a reputation in Columbus as being cheap. There's still a question of whether or not he would regress to that in a few years in Austin, but so far he's spending in Austin. He built this really nice stadium, a state-of-the-art training facility. The marketing team, they've put together a really nice marketing team that's done some really cool stuff. They've spent on players. I know there's early on in the season, some numbers came up and Austin FC was towards the bottom of the league in spending, but we didn't have a full roster. We only had one DP at the time, I think, or maybe two, and one of them was Tomas Pochettino.
Yeah,
Pochettino was on like $700K or something like that. And so with just the team we have now and still some big signings to make, we would be closer to the top third and could, depending on what signings we make before the season starts, break into the top third, which is what they said they wanted to do. Claudio and Precourt have both said that they wanted to be spending about top third, which puts you in the likes of like Portland, Seattle, teams that can win. You can win with that kind of money. And so I think it's fair to have doubts of whether or not that spending will last, but Precourt seems like a guy who wants he wants to be popular as an owner, and he wants this team to succeed, and it's not just business to him. He believes in it, and I think he wants it to be really good. We'll see in a few years if he gets bored with that and doesn't try as hard anymore. But right now, he wants it really bad, and I think anybody who's had any interaction with him or just like with that kind of bubble of people, I think it's pretty evident. So we'll see if he continues that.
Yeah, and he's not the only guy. I don't know if he was the only guy in Columbus, but Eddie Mark. There's another local owner, Eddie Margain, that's probably got close to as much money into it as Precourt does. It's even though Precourt's sort of like the public face of it. And there's some other folks. I mean, I'm sure McConaughey, he's on the investment team, but I have a feeling he's like lending his star power and probably like $7 or something. Like I can't imagine he's heavily invested in it. But we have, I think some of the owners have come to the supporter section and stuff. Like I feel like there's a real connection there that there probably was not before.
I will say his settling place, he seems to have taken it personally that people thought, okay, well, you're cheap and then you take your team and you leave. I've always felt like he's like, all right, I'm about to prove somebody wrong. And I do think with the amount of cash I think they can bring in with such a huge market, I really do think that Austin sets up nicely. And that kind of leads into our next question. It wasn't all bad in 2021, right? There are definitely positive that you can take away. And my biggest thing is that, I like it from the fan base. It's a passionate fan base. I do feel like at times it's like, okay, you still have to remember this was like a working jigsaw puzzle that was never really complete. It's a puzzle that's going to continue to be built. And I think they're doing that in this off season as we've seen a couple moves happen. But what kind of positives are you guys taking away from 2021 that you can build on in 2022?
Well, I think there's some solid connection in the attack. The addition of Sebastian Driussi by himself is something that's positive to take in. And the fact that he can have, the fact that he dropped in and just was automatically the best player on the field. Now that he's got an off season, that he's got a time to work with Alex Ring and Diego Fagundes and Cecilio and some of those other guys and Gite and the guys we've added and stuff. Like I think there's a lot of potential in the attacking force. And I mean, I think he has a chance to be a really special player. I think we went and looked when they updated the salary numbers. We went and looked, and he's like the 18th highest paid player in the league. And there's 2 or 3 other guys I would rather have than them just from like watching a half season of him play. So I think just that time together and hopefully time together both in training and outside of training. Because the other thing was like we built a team during a pandemic and they had no like social time or interaction or like those things you do to gel as a team. So just hopefully this time and familiarity will help a lot. And we're not doing we're adding pieces, but it's not like a dramatic roster churn where a lot of these guys are already familiar with each other and they're not going to have to like learn each other's ways, anything like that, because they do have some time together.
I think one of the things that I'll say that is going to be an advantage coming to 22 is just the depth. I already kind of mentioned how depleted the roster was before, but we played almost all of last season with 0 real strikers on the team. Cecilio Dominguez, who has pretty much only ever played left wing. He played some like false 9 stuff in Argentina and in Paraguay, but he's a left winger. He's like a cut inside on the right foot left winger. That's what he does. That's what he's good at. And he played at the 9 all season, almost all season. And if he was down, like we didn't have a real striker. We're coming into this season with 3 strikers on the team. So there's going to be some competition, some pretty decent talent at that position as well. And then also just depth in other places in the field. So I think the main question mark is going to be at the center back position. That's really there are a couple of spots we could be a little bit deeper, but as far as like starting or like rotational depth that are going to get a lot of minutes, that's the spot that we need to really get some more depth in. But everywhere else on the field, we're going to be 2 or 3 times deeper than we were at any given point last season.
Yeah, speaking of the depth in like attack now, adding Ethan Finley and Max Cerruti, who's going to complete his Texas trifecta that he's got going on there. Cerruti having 7 goals and 1 assist last year with Houston. Finley with only the 3 goals and 2 assists for Minnesota. What do you think their roles will be into this team? Cerruti kind of has been more recently of like a bench player, it seems like, and coming in off of there for some of these teams, not always consistently starting. But Finley was kind of a big piece of Minnesota when he went there. What do you think their roles will be going into 2022?
I think Ethan Finley is probably not like on paper right now a starter. I think there's a possibility, depending how Wolf wants to use certain guys, that he could be a starter come the beginning of the season, but mainly just a guy who Matt Doyle from Extra Time talks about minute eaters, like guys who can eat minutes. Like at Ethan Finley's worst, he can eat some minutes for an MLS team. At his best, he can be a real contributor. And I think Cerruti, his what he's going to do is we brought in Musajite, who's a young guy, but has a lot of potential. All the right tools, but probably needs to grow a little bit more just with his experience and just kind of learning the game a little bit better. Aruti will be there to kind of push him, maybe teach him some, but at the very least be in competition and say like, hey, Musa, if you're not working, if you're not picking this up, we've got a guy right here we can throw in with 9 years of MLS experience. We know he'll be fine. We can throw him in. I also think another thing Aruti will bring is he's never met a shot he didn't like, right? So
Yeah.
Austin FC didn't take a lot of shots, didn't score a lot of goals. And so as we were chasing games last year, like because we didn't have any strikers, we didn't have any options. It was if you brought an attacker off, there was nobody that you could bring on that offered anything different or anything better. And so I think Aruti and Finley will both bring that, like just a change of pace, a change of strategy, a different option, a different look at what you're doing, because we didn't have that all season. I also think both of these guys, they do really well in transition, which is the thing Austin struggled with last year. We try to break away, and either for tactical reasons or for skill reasons or for speed reasons, it almost never turned in anything like a fast break transition moment. And those two guys can both do that really well. And so I think that offers another option to Wolf, either at the end of a game or for certain games to kind of change up the tactics for certain opponents.
And I think one other thing that they bring is just being MLS guys, and having that league experience, and I think if you look at a team like Nashville that's really successful as an expansion team, they had like this core that were just, dudes in the league that, to Landon's point, took minutes and really understood the way the game worked. And, I think Austin probably thought we had that with Ben Sweat and Matt Beasler and Ulysses Segura and guys like that last year. And, we got one game out of Sweat, nothing out of Segura, and half a season out of Beasler. So I think there's a real benefit to having that veteran presence that really understands the league and the way it works. So that's another thing I'm excited about, bringing those guys in.
Yeah, and what I like too, you've talked about the link between some of those Columbus front office and Columbus guys, but Finley being at Columbus at the same time Wolf was, so at least he has that familiarity, and maybe he'll be able to kind of lean on somebody that he has a relationship with to help out if he has any locker room issues, or knowing what he gets on the field with Finley.
Also saw some Instagram photos of Finley and Hector Jimenez they were at Justin Meeram's wedding. And so I think from what I've heard and seen, Hector Jimenez and Finley are like pretty good friends. And then I think even, I want to say maybe Stuver was in Columbus at the same time as
he was
Finley at one point. So yeah, he'll definitely know some folks on the team.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Austin last year, and depth is such a huge piece, especially with the ever-changing landscape of what's going on with the virus and just guys missing time, injuries. And you talked about depth. I think this is a perfect fit as far as at least depth pieces, right? They're going to give you MLS experience, like you said, Jeremiah, which is huge, because I think, again, you can't come over here and smoke a cigarette on the bench or on the pitch or whatever Gonzalo wanted to do. I think people realize that MLS is a lot different than what it once was, and the rap that it got was not necessarily correct. And speaking of raps, that Diego Fagundes had a really bad rap. I think leaving the Revs, it seemed like they had a falling out. Fans were always, it seemed, against Diego. He couldn't really find a place with the Revs, but he did seem to find finally a home with Austin FC. He seems to be one of those guys that if you ask him to do it, he does it. And he will play positions that maybe he's not comfortable doing, but at least he will play the position and play it to 110%, which is always a good thing when you're building a team. But can you kind of talk about, his importance? I know there was some links. I know you guys talked about it where, and definitely the top flight guys always talk about the links of just understanding like he was maybe on the move, or maybe they were considering moving him around, but it does seem like he's there to stay for the long term. Can you just kind of speak to his importance and kind of swap down some of these, I guess, strange rumors that seem to be going around the Twitterverse or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I want to start with the fit part of it, because I do think that's super interesting. And
Right.
I know, and that's what we heard about him in New England. And then, we acquired him, and I think it was maybe his second week in town. He's like out playing foot golf with supporters, and he, like, people met him at the hotel. And he's like, if you talk to if you talk to people that are like involved, like in supporters culture and go to every game and stuff, I mean, it's Diego Fagundes and Brad Stuver, or like everybody's two favorite players. So I think it's kind of crazy how if somebody had talent and had a lot of success, but just didn't fit. I don't know if he just didn't get along with Bruce Arenas or whatever. Just like that change in environment and change in situation has created a whole new player. And I think because he's so bought into that, I think you see a bit of that on the field too, right? That he's playing for his friends in some way. You know, those guys hang out all the time, and he shows up at like pickup games with the fans and, you know, all this kind of thing. It's like he's really, really connected with the city, which I think helped on the field. And I also think helped in terms of these rumors about him maybe going somewhere else. And I'll leave this part to Landon.
Yeah. So the rumors, like the way they came about was so bizarre. And if the source wasn't what the source was, I wouldn't have believed any of it. But the source was his father, who is also his agent. And so it was all so weird. And there was like, there was like some like talk about like release clauses and all this. I was like, a release clause doesn't make sense on a player like Diego Fagundes. Like that doesn't make any sense at all. And if it existed, you would expect it to maybe be pretty high. And so like, I don't think it was Austin FC shopping him by any means. I don't know that they're looking to get rid of him. I would be very surprised if they were, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there were teams looking at him and reaching out and contacting his agent, who happens to be his father, who happens to have a Twitter account. So I don't know if like they're looking to get more money out of the club. Like I think he still has 2 or 3 years left on his contract. And so it's not really the ideal time to be renegotiating, but the whole thing was really bizarre. But in any case, we were very happy to keep Diego, because he was probably not our best player last year, but definitely our most consistent player last year. He put in the work every time, and rarely, I would say he had maybe 2 bad halves of a game and was at worst fine. Like never bad though, never bad.
I was going to say, looking at his passing, if you just look at, I'm taking this off of FD If you look at his passing, I mean, he really does. He's up there in the 78th percentile in passes attempted. His pass completion is astronomical. It's 96th percentile. It just seemed like the glue
for an attacking player. That's insane. That's insane.
It just seems like he was the glue that held everything together. And again, I think because you heard, I hope they don't tear my set down again, but I'm sorry, my cats are attacking me for the audio listeners. But yeah, it seems that that he had such a bad rap in New England. I think people thought he was just going to bring this horrible attitude to Austin, and he was going to be kind of toxic to the culture. And when we talked to Hernan, I mean, Hernan had personal contact with him at one point early on. And I know a lot of, like you said, a lot of the Austin FC fans were out, you know, playing foot golf
meeting
or
him
whatever.
too.
Yeah, just having a good time with him. And I think he showed Austin that he's there to stay. And I think that was what kind of the heartbeat of the team so far.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like a guy who's necessarily like a vocal leader in the locker room or anything like that. But the way he works, it's just undeniable. Nobody will ever accuse Diego of not trying, because he played, because of our lack of depth. There were a lot of games he had no business still being in, with either the injury, like a tackle he had taken, or the amount he had run. No business being in some of those games, and played a full 90 still.
So let's talk about a DP last year that came over, Thomas Pochettino. I remember there being lots of hype when this was being rumored, and then when the sign happened. I think it happened right after we were done recording with Hernan, that doing this preview last year, that, you know, they started really linking the Pochettino, but it seemed like the fans got frustrated with him pretty quickly from what I was able to see on social media. Some saying that he wasn't really, you know, either putting in the effort or maybe just underperforming, and now is already back on loan to River Plate. And I would assume probably not coming back. What are your thoughts? Is this like a get yourself right and come back, or is this a loan and then they will eventually sell him at the end of this loan? And what went wrong?
Well, that's what went wrong is the question. I just think he's he was not a good fit for Josh Wolf and Josh Wolf's system. And I don't know that we ever saw the best of him. I mean, he was the first player I remember Josh Wolf specifically calling out in a post-game press conference, and it was about his freelancing, not playing within the system. And that happened fairly early on. And then, that was not the only time. So I think there's obviously talent there, which is why there's a team in Argentina that's a huge team that's really excited about it. But I don't think he was ever going to work in this configuration of Austin FC. And I can't imagine. I mean, I think that loan was a loan with the intent that he doesn't come back here. Now, if the coach changes at the end of this year and, there's a different system, then maybe that's a different set of options. But I think it was the most efficient move to get him out of Austin and free this designated player spot up for somebody else. And that will be kind of done with him. And I think Landon might have a little bit of a different take on him as a player. I think. I don't remember. A year ago, we were really excited. I don't remember why now.
I agree with most of what you said. He's very talented. Like, he's a really talented guy. And you could see that in Austin FC games sometimes. He made poor decisions in games pretty regularly, either by shooting bad shots or holding onto the ball for a little bit too long and giving the ball away. Josh Wolf talked about his freelancing, and like in a Josh Wolf system, which is much like a Greg Berhalter system, it's all about the system, right? And so if a guy's not buying in and doing what he's supposed to do, that's not going to fly with a coach like that. And so I think maybe they hoped that, because that's how he played in Argentina, is he would kind of float around and kind of find the ball and do what he wanted. I think they probably hoped that they could teach that out of him. And that didn't work for whatever reason, whether it's on the coaching end or on the receiving end of it all, but it just didn't work. And I don't think it was ever going to work. And so I was kind of shocked that they found someone willing to take him after the poor season that he had. But I think he still has a lot of like a pretty high stock in Argentina, just because he was a kind of a young up and coming guy whenever he left here. And so I think his stock is still pretty high in Argentina, which was maybe the only place he was going to go and Austin make any kind of profit or break even off of him.
So making that move, Pochettino shipped off to Argentina. It caused quite a ruckus on Twitter, this next piece of news. And Landon, I know you explained this on your podcast over there with Jeremiah. Can you kind of run us through the reasoning in behind why Alex Ring was made a DP, or given a DP spot, given that contract? Because again, I think Twitter instantly wants to overreact to different things. I think you guys talked about this on your show, where it tends to be just an echo chamber on Twitter, where it's just yelling about and not actually reading the article. They're just out there going, you know what? This seems like a really bad idea. Can you kind of explain maybe the TAM situation and then why Alex Ring was made a DP?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, the reason why people are mad is because they're used to the old MLS rules, like the DP rules, where you get 3 designated players, you spend as much as you want on them. In thinking that way, I think it's completely understandable why you would be upset that one of the DPs is Alex Ring, because last season he was making about $1 million. I think on this new contract it'll be a little bit higher than that, but I think a lot of fans were still hoping for like a bigger name than what we already have. But because of this new U22 initiative, if you use all 3 of your U22 spots, your third DP player essentially has to be a TAM level player. He has to be within the salary threshold that you could buy him down with TAM if you needed to or wanted to. For that reason, this third DP either needed to be below the age of 23, that's another stipulation of the rule, or be making below $1.6 million. If you take all of that into account, Alex Ring actually fits that mold really well. It's a guy who only had 1 year left on his contract. So we get Alex Ring for at least 2 or 3 more years, if not longer. And then he gets a little bit of a pay bump, which I would say he maybe deserves. And then we also free up a bunch of TAM that we were using on Alex Ring to keep him below the DP threshold, because there's $400 some odd thousand of TAM that we were using to make him not a DP already. So why not make a guy who is a known quantity, very good for the team, make him a DP, he's here for 4 more years, and then use that TAM on something a little bit more experimental.
Yeah, and I think people forget just how good he is. I mean, it's funny to say that, but it really is true. I think when he came over from NYCFC, last year, there was such a hype around how good this guy is. Probably one of the, if not the top, one of the top CDMs in that central midfield, and being able to cover ground and can join the attack when he wants to. But he really does a nice job to protect those defenders at times. And then it was like they totally forgot that in a span within a year. And I honestly, I don't think you find anybody more stable. And I get the idea of, like you said, I think that they're used to the old rules where I'm just going to pay a bunch of people and they're going to come over here and they need to be international and they need to be guys that I've never heard of. We're scouting from Argentina or Brazil or wherever they're going to come from. But again, I don't know where you find a better six. Like I just don't know if that exists out there, how solid he has been in the past and how solid he can be if he's got a defense in behind him that he can trust.
Yeah, when we would do like planning for like our post game review shows, it would always be like, oh, this guy did this thing exciting, and Brad Stuber had these amazing saves, and we wouldn't even talk about Alex Ring. And then we get into the show, it's like, oh yeah, and Alex Ring did all these amazing, defensive things, and actually, cut off 6 scoring opportunities and like all this stuff that you don't. I mean, it's not flashy, and you don't see a lot of it. But like when you
doesn't
dig
show
in
up on the score sheet a lot.
Yeah. But when you dig into like sort of the more advanced metrics, you're like, holy smokes, like this guy is just like dominating a part of the field, like nobody, especially for Austin, like nobody else in Austin was doing. And then we'd have to we'd throw that at the end every time. It's like, oh yeah, Alex Ring did all the amazing Alex Ring things. Next game.
Was it a Sporting Kansas City game? Which game was it that I think he was the one that got the red card, and it was so out of character for him. I think it was the first one he'd gotten in professional sports or something like that. And they made a huge, because it just seems so unlike Alex Ring. It's like somebody had taken over his body.
And that was early on in the season too, when Austin actually was doing a good run up the table, where everybody's like, this is a surprising team. And then it kind of fell apart after that game.
Yeah, he got 2 reds this season.
Yeah.
And I think Alex Ring is he's a feisty guy, but looking back at his record, he hasn't gotten many red cards. I think that was his first one in MLS. I think his last one was in Germany or something like many years ago. But I think Alex Ring was really frustrated this season. I don't think he likes to lose, and that's pretty much all Austin FC did all year. And so I think that probably had a little bit to do with the way he reacted at certain times. But I'm hoping that with some reinforcements and with him not having to just like do the dirty work for everybody else all this season, if everything goes to plan, that maybe Alex Ring will be a little bit happier and not get some of those red cards.
All right. So a question here about the defense, outside of Brad Stuver, who was like the highlight of the team, like really, I feel like stole the spotlight of the team with how many saves he had to make, and leading the league with saves. Austin did with 136. We were going to ask you also about Kip Keller, who was just drafted as well. So if you did, I don't know if you want to combine these into one question here, but just about the back line, and are there other moves that need to be made other than just the Kip Keller to make this a better defense, especially now that Beasler retired, or he moved on, right? He retired. Yeah. That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah. So I guess just your thoughts on the defense and how Kip Keller adds to it, and what else they need to add.
Well, I think there's no doubt that this was the biggest position of need going into this offseason. And we've talked a lot about reaction and some of the negative reaction to Finley and Arruti, and even like re-signing Jared Stroud. It's like they weren't a defensive player, right? And everybody knows like we need a top line center mid, because Julio Cascante, center back, whatever. I called it a cornerback on the show we did last time. I was watching Atlanta and Georgia. I mean, sorry, right. Alabama and Georgia play, and there's like recording a show at the same time. But yes, we need a center back, especially with Beasler being gone. I mean, Julio Cascante does a lot of good stuff, but he's kind of slow and does a lot of bad stuff. Romanya's learning the league, so I think that is definitely our biggest position of need, along with some depth on the outside. And we were so excited about Keller that we didn't even like think that was a possibility, which is why we didn't talk about him very much on the show. But I know, Landon, you watched, I don't know, some video. I don't know how much, but can you talk about where he fits in?
Yeah, I mean, he looks, I think the way I described him on that show after I watched a little bit of film on him was Walker Zimmerman light, like like tall guy, good frame, athletic, can play the ball quite well, plays good long balls. I don't know that he's Walker Zimmerman, but he looks like a guy who has a lot of the right tools. And I'm not going to pretend to know everything about him, but listening to the people who do know a lot about him, Travis Clark from Top Drawer Soccer and the guys at the MLS outlets, were all super high on this guy and think that he's going to be maybe the most likely player to succeed out of this whole draft class. And fills a position of need. I did see some Austin FC folks online saying like, well, maybe he'll be good enough that we don't need another center back. We still need another center back. I think at best, like these college guys, they take a while to kind of fit in. So like even at, I think best case scenario is Kip Keller is fighting for like that third center back spot this year. But we still need a guy to come in and just like boss that back line, because since Beasler went out, we don't have it anymore. And I think Romagna could get there eventually, but he's still young. He has some learning to do. He needs to get a bit more, a bit smarter, a bit more experienced with his play. Cascante is just prone to too many mistakes. We need a guy to come in and be the guy. And Kip Keller might be that in a few years, but he's not that right now.
I was going to say, if you look around Europe, you look around MLS, and it seems like that's the position, right? That's the anchor of the team. As much as they can argue, you need an attacking player that's going to score a lot of goals. You need a keeper that's going to keep the ball. And that it seems like any team that you're looking around, if it's a strong team, if it's a team that's perennial title winners, or if it's people that own the Premier League like Manchester City and not Liverpool. It can be.
I was just going to say Virgil van Dijk absolutely fills that spot.
Yeah, Ruben Diaz also fills that spot. I know very well. But yeah, like you said, VVD does the exact same thing. I know when I was reading, like you said, Landon, I was reading a lot of stuff before heading on to the show today. And it does seem like, this kid captained St. Louis. They play extremely well under his captainship. It was a team that played extremely well, got all the way to the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament. And that's what you want in a guy, right? That's what you want in a kid that's coming up, the 21-year-old that just knows how to lead and is a natural born leader. I feel like if you're a center back and you can get those things down, and then I think it just kind of all falls into suit. And it really helps having a keeper like Stuber play like he did last year, because I think it adds that extra blanket of protection. And then having Alex Ring in front of you kind of patrolling the midfield too, it's not going to hurt anything.
So we always like asking this question on our preview, so it feels good to ask this again here as we ramp up the season. But I forgot to put this one on here, but just what would be a successful season for Austin in 2022?
Ooh. You have an answer, Jeremiah?
I have an answer. I think. Well, I have a worst case scenario.
Give us both. Yeah.
No, I think the worst. I said the most frustrating scenario for the fan base, especially the Wolf people, would be if we finish like 9th, so that Josh Wolf gets to say that he's shown some progress and has a reason to stick around, but we aren't a playoff team. So like I think that's like because that's you're neither building nor tearing it down at that point. But
right.
I want to see like a 6th place finish, like this team with what they have now. With Juicy and Gite, having an off season and the people we've added, like there's no reason that it can't be a playoff team in the West.
Yeah, I think that's my answer as well, as playoffs. Like if we can get into the playoffs and at least threaten to get past to the second round, I think based on how bad we were last season, that like I think Austin fans will take that. I would take that just to see a little bit of progress, a little bit of improvement on some certain things. We have quite a few like pretty promising young guys that aren't their finished product yet, so bringing along some of those guys would be a plus as well. But yeah, I think making the playoffs would be good enough.
Last year the popular answer for everything was the top 4 of each conference. Everybody wanted the home playoff game. I was like getting to the point where I was like, not all these teams are going to be able to do that.
There's not that many spots. Yeah,
there's not that many spots. It's only the 4.
Got us in trouble with Montreal because it was like we put them in Wooden Spoon and they did not get Wooden Spoon and almost made the playoffs and were challenging for. It was a disaster. So we stopped predicting. It's never turns out very well for us.
I was going to say, if we get there, one thing I think that will be good is I don't see Josh Wolf being like the cynical RSL. Play ugly football and just to advance. Kind of, we will put our best effort in if we make it into the playoffs. So it should at least still be entertaining if we get there.
There's nothing better than possession football. It's beautiful to watch.
Unless you don't get any shots off.
Right, that's true. Then it's not so
It's
pretty.
beautiful when it's working.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess as we wrap it up here, where can everybody find the podcast, and where can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can find the podcast anywhere you can find podcasts in audio form. We don't do any video stuff, but it's Moontower Soccer. If you just search that, you'll find it. And then we're on pretty active on Twitter. So at Moontower Soccer on Twitter. Do a little bit of Instagram stuff as well. And then I'm at LVAhero87 on Twitter, and Jeremiah is
J Bentley _ATX, and Twitter is basically my access point to the whole world. So I'll talk a lot about soccer and politics and celebrities and everything else there. But you'll get plenty of soccer too.
Awesome. Well, thank you for jumping on and doing this for us. And we are back. Thanks to the guys at Moontower Soccer coming on, and you can find their socials in the description of the podcast or the video if you're watching the video. If you're watching the video, you saw Logan's scarves.
I forgot to even mention that to them as they were leaving the show when we did, because we pause and we talk outside of the show, we go off the air, but it was so embarrassing. I couldn't stop laughing either. I hope Jeremiah didn't think I was laughing, but then you
see Ashley crawling on the floor to put it back up.
I'll probably never come on again. I do apologize, Landon and Jeremiah, if you saw my wife crawling. I don't know how much you actually saw of her crawling, though.
I saw it. I saw the door swing open, and I see her crawling.
I don't know how much of this is going to make the cut, but this is great. It was.
Watch the video, everyone.
Yes, please watch the video. It was hilarious. My cat just absolutely destroys the set.
Listen to it and then watch it as well, because you'll get some fun. So I had a hard time keeping my, especially when that thing was falling down, like when it was actually down. And anytime I'd look up at your corner of the screen, I was like, I can't keep looking at this corner of the screen.
Yeah, I was like, I got to keep my cool because, I mean, this is going to be on the episode. I was so scared. I was just going to keep laughing. I was like, I'm just going to keep laughing because it went down and then the door swung open. It was wild. So if you are a viewer or if you're a listener of the show, go view it, because this was like top 10 blooper. Like this is number 1. This is easily, like, we were really good last year. We didn't really have any mistakes. Like we didn't really have anything crazy happen. I don't think, like green screen might have fallen or something, but
I knew it was going to happen once your cat jumped out there, because you had said that you were trying to get all the cats out so they don't knock it down, and then they did. So it's kind of like Chekhov's cat at this point. But I might put that as a clip on Twitter too. We'll see.
This is great.
But anyway, Austin FC. Luckily, the draft was today, so we were able to actually ask them about Kip Keller, which is nice.
That was good.
And I thought they were very insightful with what they have here. Successful season, they say, is playoffs or, just making the playoffs, like 6th place, not the famed 4th place finish that everybody was quoting last year for every team. But, we don't know them as well as they know Austin. So for me, I thought that actually seemed very high, a 6th place finish.
Yeah.
Do you think they make the playoffs? We're not going to make our big predictions this early and stuff, but I just want to, last year we'd kind of wrap it up with our predictions, but a successful season for you, Logan, for Austin would be what?
Okay, so a successful season as far as like the table's concerned, I would say they need to be 10 or above. I think that's more realistic. I just don't see this team yet. Like I just don't see. One, they have yet to find a center back. They've got a month to do so. And I know they don't grow on trees. I know a center back is very hard to find on the world market, just because I think there's a lot of center backs out there that have solidified their spots as captains on these teams. I think that's the toughest part about finding center backs, right? Is that they are oftentimes, like we've talked about in the episode, that they are oftentimes the anchor of the team. They captain teams quite a bit. So it's not like you can just go pluck somebody off from a different team. And I don't know if there's anything really out there right now, especially MLS wide. A lot of them, if they're moving to Europe because the center back drought seems to be happening over there as well. But Jordan, I think a top 10 finish in the West, honestly. I know that it seems a little harsh, and I don't know what these other teams are going to do, but I look at teams above them, right? I look at FC Dallas, which is a team I think they do surpass. San Jose, I think, gets better. I think LAFC is in a rebuild, so maybe that's a team they can kind of sneak up past. But above that, I mean, you're talking about the Galaxy, which I don't think the Galaxy stands still. I think the Galaxy have a better squad anyway than Austin. Vancouver is building something pretty good there in Canada. Minnesota United, I thought, didn't play very well last year, and that could change quickly. And then you get up into the top 4 spots, and they're not even close to those teams. So it's tough to look at this and think that, I don't see them progressing enough. I know Drusy is a really nice addition, and he did have a really good half of his season when they did add him in the transfer market. But top 10 is where I'm shooting. A 9 spot is probably the most ideal, but I don't see them making the playoffs this year.
I think a successful season for them is kind of where Jeremiah was saying what might upset some of the Austin fans, which is that 9th place spot that is enough to show progress, but not enough to make a move on manager.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I would think moving up to 9th place would actually be a pretty good move for them. Now, of course, it's all relative. I mean, this is, again, they talked about how they're looking to spend in the top third of the league. If that's the case, then the expectations are going to rise. And of course, none of these teams are done yet. I think we got a week or two until preseason starts, like the training starts. And then we have the end of February. So as we go on, if any big things happen, we can address those as we go. And that's why we make our final predictions, closer to kickoff here. But yeah, unfortunately, I do think that as it stands now, this roster, I think the ceiling would kind of be that 9th place. There's just, the West is so stacked, that I think it's going to be tough to kind of break into that. So, but if they start going out there and spend a whole bunch of money, then we'd have to kind of reevaluate, I think, that as a whole, and maybe then we'd be able to say that, I think Finley helps. I think Urruti helps. I think
a full year Drusy
Keller fix. Yeah. Keller helps. But I think, again, as we mentioned, they need another central defense center back here to be able to really challenge. And with the way MLS defenses are, that can make all the difference. When you look at Nashville making that trade for Walker Zimmerman and him being the anchor for them, that's the kind of thing they need. And you're not going to get that in a college kid right away.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's something they need to address, and I'm not saying they won't. Claudio Reyna has built teams before at NYCFC. So, it's just one of those things that, as it stands right now, I would have to say that their ceiling is probably 9th place, unfortunately.
Yeah. So you and I are in the same thought. I think at 9 or 10 spot. I mean, you never want to be looking up at the 2 LA teams, because while yes, they can be on the mat, they can get up off the mat really quick. And that's never good. And then everybody above them, I think, is going to get progressively better. Maybe RSL struggles because they're going to have to replace Albert. But yeah, I think we're in a good spot there, at least 9th and 10th. It's a tough time in Texas right now. Really tough time.
Yeah, all the Texas teams have not been great. Okay, so where can we? What are we going to do now? What was I going to say? We will be doing another preview. Do we know who is next?
Yeah, so right now, the one that is solidified and set in stone, we're definitely going to be doing Miami. Unless something crazy happens where we do 2 episodes recording on Miami on Friday. Yeah, we're going to be doing Miami. Might as well knock out like Cincinnati and Houston, Dallas next. But
yes.
But yeah, we're going to be doing Usually I start at the bottom just because I start with teams that I unfortunately don't think are going to add too much. So that way, when we do release these previews, not much has changed, and you can kind of go back and listen to these previews and kind of understand. So I kind of try to guess at who's going to be signing people. So I kind of go in and look at Twitter and see, okay, who's been linked to a lot of places, who usually don't make the big moves. And unfortunately, it does seem like it's always the bottom of the table teams. So. Yeah, Miami's interesting because they've pretty much are turning over a whole roster right before our eyes. So I guess we'll see what happens with Austin with Inter Miami. So should be interesting. Inter Miami is next. I'd say 99% chance that it's the next one. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to give us a follow, you can reach us on Twitter at Stateside Show, Instagram at Stateside Show, Facebook.com/Stateside Show, email us statesideshow@gmail.com. And we're happy to be back on the grind doing these previews. But so please leave us a review. That's a way to segue into it. I accidentally say the word review. Let's go ahead and throw us one. But yes, we are excited to get started. Hopefully you enjoyed our Austin FC preview with Moontower Soccer. And we will catch you next time where we talk Inter Miami. 99% sure.
If he's the minister of culture, is he all right?
No.
They're back.